Assalamu alaikum. How's everybody doing? Alhamdulillah. So just a reminder that next Friday, inshallah, is our big day. It's the night when we'll complete the Quran, inshallah. It's also the night when we fundraise. But it's also helpful that you don't wait till that night to donate if you're planning to donate. So if you can donate starting now, that would just make everything that much easier for us on that night, especially for me and Imam al-Rifai. So for the next 3 nights, tonight and the next 2 nights, I want to talk a little bit about the miracles of the Quran. And then inshallah, the last, I have one more set right after this. So the last set I'll do, set like as if it's like a concert. The last set we'll talk about the benefits of the Quran, memorizing the Quran, carrying the Quran, things like that. So for the next 3 nights, we're going to talk about the miracles. To understand the miracles of the Quran, it's important that we know what a miracle is. So that's what I want to talk about tonight a little bit. So a miracle, we understand the miracle in the Sharia as something that breaches normal causality, habitual causality. So we usually think that A affects B. If I drop something, everyone would say that the act of dropping it or letting go would make it fall because of gravity, A to B. And then if I let go of something and it was suspended, that would be a breach of that causality. That would be a miracle. Khariqul aada. So all of the miracles of the prophets, all the prophets were sent with miracles, alayhim as-salam. And one of our beliefs is that all of the miracles of the previous prophets were also given to Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the prophet Sayyidina Muhammad, that is, alayhi salam, has over 1,000 miracles that have been documented. Those miracles, the things that I'm talking about, those are physical things. A dead person becomes alive, a sick person becomes healthy, the tree talks, the stone speaks, the water came from the fingers of the Prophet ﷺ, the moon split. Those are all physical things. Okay, and there are many, many, many of those physical things. And those are important miracles because Allah Ta'ala gives those miracles to the Anbiya to make their point, to be a challenge to the people that disbelieve that they can't respond to that. So the miracle from the Prophet has within it a challenge. And just to remember this, think of Moses and Fir'aun. Fir'aun, that's what drove Fir'aun crazy. Because Fir'aun quantified his dominion. He saw his power and his sovereignty from the point of view of quantity. You look at the rivers that flow beneath my feet, look at this and look at that. I give life and I give death and I do this and he saw it materially. So Moses came with real miracles that drove Fir'aun insane. He just went mad. I mean, how could you do that? I'm the one that has all of these things. And Fir'aun was not able to see the bigger meaning, which is La ilaha illallah. You're not God. A few days later he drowned, and the rest, as we say, is history. So the miracle comes with a challenge. But there's another type of miracle, and that's the miracle. It's more cerebral. It's the miracle in which a prophet or our Prophet ﷺ talks about something that's going to happen in the future and it happens. Or it's a miracle in which the Prophet ﷺ makes dua and then the dua is answered right then and there. Or it is the promise of victory when the Muslims are very small, very disenfranchised, very weak, and then they are given victory. And it is this type of miracle that belongs to this type of miracle is the Quran. Another differentiation between the miracles is that there's the miracle of the Prophet, of the Rasul, and there's the miracle of the Risala, there's the miracle of the message itself. The miracle of the message is the Quran. So even though I can't imagine anything greater than seeing somebody dead come to life, I can't imagine what that would be like. All of the people that we've buried, at ICCP, to have them walk in the next day, I can't imagine a miracle greater than that. But there is something greater than that, and that is the Quran. But you have to think about the Quran because it's a cerebral, it engages your imagination, your reason, language, and your understanding. It's different than the physical thing. I'm not diminishing from the physical miracle, but the Quran is the lasting miracle. And that is why I want to talk a little bit about that. So with that little introduction, I'm going to give maybe 1 or 2 examples just for tonight, and then I'll give you a story. A story that has nothing to do, of course, with what I'm talking about. One of the amazing things about the Quran is the power of its language. And sometimes there's a little bit of an inhibition because we're doing this in English and the Quran is in Arabic, but still it translates. Is that many of the leading poets and people of letters at the time of the Risale converted to Islam because of the Quran. If the Quran were from the Prophet ﷺ, if it was just a human thing, then what would a poet at the time have done? They would have seen that as a call for a competition. I'm going to write something better. I'm going to compose something better, something smarter, something quicker. Because artists, they compete. That's part of what they do. That's part of what gets them going. One of the poets, I think it was Al-Rabi'a, I think, radiallahu anhu. Maybe I got the name wrong, I apologize. When he heard Surah Al-Baqarah, he became Muslim and he composed no more poetry for the rest of his life. And they said, why aren't you composing poetry? He said, Allah has given me this instead of my poetry. And he was stumped. Imagine an artist. I want you to understand that this poet is like an artist. I mean, forgive the examples, but think of somebody like Michael Jackson or somebody like Lady Gaga. Can you imagine them doing other than what they did? They're going to do what they did all the time, no matter what. That's who they're an artist. They're thinking about the rhyme scheme. They're thinking about the music, and they're taking all of their somebody like Taylor Swift, all of the things that all of her life instances, and then she makes them into a song. Naam? I don't know everything. I know some things. I know a little bit about a lot of things. I wish I knew a lot about the few things that I'm supposed to know very well. Right, and that's one of the memes that they were saying in the Super Bowl is that the guy, what was the guy's name? Kelsey. He was yelling at the coach, if we lose, then she's going to write a song about us. Huh? So imagine something that's so. What would make Taylor Swift stop composing? And she's been playing that guitar since she was a kid. Imagine something that's so powerful, that's so earth-shattering, that knocks that creativity out of the person and submits that this is from a divine origin. La ilaha illallah. That's what it was like for those poets to become Muslim when they heard the Quran. From the power of its language, from the power of its rhyming, from the power of how it sounds, how it's recited. We'll talk about that maybe tomorrow or the other night. I mean, mashallah, Anas is giving us a sample of that every night. The power of how the Quran sounds in its different maqamat and in the different riwayat, different qira'at, I mean. That was one poet. Hassan ibn Thabit was another poet, and he became Muslim. He's like the poet laureate of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ employed him and used him and his talents. He said, "Qul wa ruhullahi wa ruh qudus yu'ayyiduk." He said, speak, or we would say, spit the rhymes, and Gabriel will support you, will give you victory. So the Prophet ﷺ used these people and employed them to spread that message. Now, if the Quran was fake, as I said, or it was devoid of that deep literal meaning, those people would not have been attracted. But those were amongst the first people to become Muslim. These are people, by the way, that became Muslim in the time of Mecca, not in the time of Medina. Political leadership, Abu Sufyan, that comes much later, when the groundswell forms behind the Prophet ﷺ, and there's no turning back. He's going to win. And that's the second example that I want to give, and this is for me the greatest example, is that the good guys won at the end. That's the proof of the Quran. All of this, the Prophet ﷺ was by himself, had nobody. And then the early Muslims were persecuted. They were an odd group of people. There was Bilal al-Habashi, there was Suhaib al-Rumi, there was Salman al-Farisi, and all of the poor and the elderly, and then he's saying we're going to win. And he's saying that we're going to be victorious. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. I mean, for him to say those he didn't say it, of course it's revelation, but to say those things consecutively for 20 years, and then at the end they actually won. And all of these other people, we don't know who they are. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar, fasalli li rabbika wanhar, inna shani'uka huwa al-abtar. Who is that shani'uka? There is no ijma' in the tafsir. Look at the beauty of that verse. Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ that we have honored you, that we have given you nobility in your name, we have given you the Kawthar, Alam nashrah laka sadrak wa wada'na anka. You know, his name will be spread, and he is addressing the Qurashi who is cursing the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ and saying, your lineage is cut. Who is that person? There's no ijma' in the tafsir. Do you see the power of that? It could have been, it's Fulan. And he died and then he has no progeny. That could have been, that would have been fine. But to emphasize the power of this verse, we actually don't know who that person is, who that person was with certainty. Meaning they've been gone in history, wiped away from the memory of humanity. But what stays is the Quran. Right? So this is one of the miracles of the Quran. So we'll stay with this theme, inshallah, for tomorrow. I'll try to talk about some of the stories and some of the languages. Okay, remember I told you about Sheikh Muhammad Amin al-Baghdadi, who cured the girls. Okay, so one of his students was Sheikh Ali al-Ma'dawi al-Sa'idi, rahimahullah. Have you heard of him? Of course not, no one's heard of these people. But this was a real sheikh, and he was a jurist, and he took occupancy in the sheikh's mosque. If you remember, the sheikh lived in this strange sounding mosque, Jashankir, which is behind the Hussein Mosque in an old part of Cairo called Elgawhary. And the mosque is very beautiful because when you walk into the mosque, there's this huge courtyard, and all throughout the walls of the mosque are these little khalwas, these little places where people can sit to study, to retreat, to worship, do i'tikaf, do khalwa, so on and so forth. And that's one of the reasons why the Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin al-Baghdadi had decided to stay there. Al-Muhim. So the Sheikh al-Ma'dawi al-Sa'idi, he used to live in one of those khalwas, and he used to teach to some of the students of the Azhar in the college of the Sharia. The Sheikh was blind. So he had like maybe 6, 7 students, okay, max, that was it. So one day his students come in to walk into him in the class, and then the first couple walked in, and the next couple walk in. He said, "La, itla barra anta yala huwa." In Egyptian, he said, "You two get out of here." He's like, "Maulana," but he's like, "La, la, la, itla. Wallahi la yaflah. Wallahi la yaflah. Wallahi la yaflah." So he kicked the students out, and he swore, "Successful by Allah, they will not be successful. By Allah, they will not be successful." I mean, this is a voluntary class. They're walking from the Azhar, they're crossing the street over into the, they're making the effort to go. No one's paying anyone. This is fi sabilillah. So those students, they kind of feel bad. Why did the sheikh kick us out of class? What did we do? So they go back to the university. 1 day, 2 day pass, and then on the door of their college, of the office of their college, the student who the sheikh prevented from entering was announced that he is to be dismissed from the university. So the other students said, "Oh, what's that?" And then they put 2 and 2 together. They said the sheikh must have known something. So they asked around and found out, I don't know the story, maybe the student was found in a compromising place with compromising people. I don't know exactly what that means, but yeah, we'll just go with it and let your imagination run wild as you'd like. So it was the police, brought this to the attention, because this is the Azhar, so you can't be living a public life that's not befitting of a Azhari. That's the idea. So if you do something that they deem compromise, whatever that is, you're going to be called. In Muhim, the Mu'eed, the head of the college, took the file from the police and dismissed the students. The next day, right away, the students went to the sheikh. They said, "Mawla," and the sheikh, they were afraid, when he was going to kick us out again. They walked in, "Ahlan wa sahlan marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan marhaba." Yeah, sit down. So they said, "Okay, all is clear." They took their lesson. After the lesson, they said, "Yeah, Mawlana, what happened the other day?" He said, "Nothing happened." "What do you mean?" He's like, "La, la, la, what happened? You have to tell us exactly what happened the other day." He said, "I'm blind, as you see, but every day you guys come to me, the 5, 6 of you come, I feel like there's a light that's coming into the room. But that one day, as those 2 were entering, and I don't know who they were, I felt that there was a darkness. And I didn't want that darkness, so I asked you guys to leave." The point of the story is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the believer a light by which to see. And the light by which the believer sees is not limited to the physical eyesight, but it's al-basira. It's a type of inner sight that we see. These stories were such a part of my journey that any time we would go meet the sheikh one-on-one, we make ghusl, we pray 2 rak'ahs of tawbah, be like, I got to clear the slate because I don't want to go. I don't want to go and be embarrassed and kicked out. I mean, really, even to this day, the Shaykh calls me, I try, oh, what did I do? One time I told him, I said, Maulana, are you upset with me? And he started laughing. He's like, if you said that, you must have done something wrong. But I'm just calling because I haven't heard your voice in a long time, or I wanted to ask you a question or something like that. But all joking aside, the believer has a vision that Allah Ta'ala places in them. Think about the masjid. Think about, we come to the mosque, we have wudu, we come to the mosque dressed for prayer, and we've covered our awrah. We're all here to do something together. There's a special environment in the mosque that we don't experience necessarily when you're outside. It's not about good or bad, it's just obviously we're all here to worship. Maybe 20% of you know the names of each other. That's about it. I don't think I know everybody's name. I love all of you, and I smile when I see you and I'm happy, but we don't know each other than coming to the masjid. So this type of association, Allah Ta'ala builds in the heart a type of vision, a type of sight. And this sight will protect you. The other day I was preparing for a lecture I had to record. I promise I'll end with this. And I'm not saying that I'm the example, I'm just giving you a mini version of how Allah Ta'ala comes to the assistance. And I was reading this passage. There was nothing wrong with the passage, but I didn't feel like there was, I don't know, I just felt like something is wrong. So I flipped, I said, who is he quoting from? And I flip a couple pages and I say, oh, he's quoting from an extremist. Yeah, this person's quote should not be in this book. There's a book about Ulum al-Quran, the subject that I've been teaching you guys. I said, subhanAllah, I knew something was off. I said to myself, there must have been something off. After I caught myself, and I just sort of covered that, I didn't cover that in the recordings, I asked myself, what is it about that caught my attention? Nothing rational. There was nothing rational about what I read. There's nothing about extremism. There's nothing about killing people. It's about creativity and the Quran and imagination. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts something in your heart to protect you. And you have to trust that instinct. You have to cultivate that instinct. And you cultivate that by coming to the mosque, by praying, by fasting, by reading the Quran, by turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a tremendous gift that unfortunately people out there don't have. So this is a gift that we have that we need to hold on to, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.